but was unable to acclimate. He remained at advanced base camp to support the team. His video diary records what happens next.
With information from the Sherpas, Lincoln is, I suppose, best described as crazy, as altitude crazy. I've just heard that the Sherpas are trying to literally kick him to move, but he's just gone mad.
The Sherpas have no choice but to try and manhandle Lincoln down to safety. In the communications tent, Lincoln's teammate, Richard Harris, tries to make him focus.
Lincoln, this is Richard. Barbara's waiting for you. Dylan and Dorsey are waiting for you. You need to come down now.
Pemba, Thomas Webber's Sherpa, arrives to help with Lincoln's rescue.
I'd have some moments of lucidity.
Yes. What are you doing here?
He said, Thomas has died. And that was just a huge shock. Just seemed so inconceivable, since he seemed to have been going so well. And that's then I shut down again.
Cerebral edema is toying with Lincoln's mind.
I thought I was in Queensland. A really severe case of wishful thinking. You know, I actually felt quite safe and quite happy just to be there. And then I heard an Australian voice speaking English.
Lincoln, I think that your mind is playing tricks with you, and you are trying to fight the Sherpas. They're trying to help you down. Please help them. Help yourself for your family's sake and our sake.
I suddenly took the instruction to continue abseiling.
In his delusional state, Lincoln has to abseil down the treacherous second step. All the Sherpas can do is watch helplessly. In Australia, Lincoln Hall's wife, Barbara, waits anxiously for news from Everest. Then comes the worrying news that Lincoln is still near the summit.
I immediately felt really sick and full of dread, because he would have been up near the summit for probably 6 or 7 hours, and I couldn't imagine what difficulty he was having.
At 28,000 feet, Lincoln's difficulty is the second step. This footage shows the 150-foot vertical rock face. In his disoriented state, it's proving extremely dangerous.
My mind was saying abseil, but my body couldn't handle it. I whizzed down the ropes, pretty well out of control. What happened was I swung across and slammed into Pemba to try and stop me hurting him so much. I sort of thought, well, I'll use the spring of my leg to slow down the impact, but unfortunately I had these spiky things called crampons on the end of my boots, which are really sharp. I mean, they're designed so your feet don't slip on ice. Well, they certainly didn't slip on Pemba's thigh either. At the time, I hadn't realised I'd hit him with the crampons and that I'd actually wounded his leg quite badly. And we're like two spiders with hanging beneath this cliff on our abseil ropes.
Pemba is badly hurt, but he and the other 3 Sherpas simply refuse to give up on Lincoln.
People say that the Sherpas should have left me when I was being really difficult, but the Sherpas just don't think like that. What they were engaged in doing was getting me down the mountain, and that's what they were going to do. The Sherpas really struggled to get me as far as they could, but eventually they had to stop.
In an extraordinary feat of endurance, the Sherpas have dragged Lincoln as far as they can. But at 28,000 feet, they are still in the death zone. Running out of oxygen here means almost certain death.
When Lakcha, Dorji, Dawa and Pemba finally got me to the point where I spent the night, they could do nothing else. We had a 19-hour day there, And it wasn't 19 hours of descent. I mean, it was 19 hours of struggle. And so it was an extraordinarily hard thing for them physically. We'd all run out of oxygen, dehydrated. We were all close to death.
But Lincoln faces yet another threat, the bitter cold. Frostbite is the result of the body's attempt to preserve its core temperature. Blood vessels near the skin begin to constrict, forcing blood to the essential organs. Without warmth, the cells in the extremities begin to freeze. Down at Advanced Base Camp, Kevin Augello is realizing that time is running out.
A decision at some point has got to be made to leave him to die.
Yeah, but could you, your best friend? No way.
Yeah, but the decision has got to be made by the Sherpas and Alex. They can't. They're on a knife-edge ridge that only one person can walk by. You can't. If he doesn't want to move because he's just become completely delirious, what can they do? And at what point do you decide that? Because otherwise you're going to have one dead climber plus 3 dead Sherpas.
Yeah.
It's at this point that Lincoln slips into a coma due to cerebral edema. His brain is shutting down, and his respiration becomes barely perceptible.
From what I understand, they were monitoring my, vital signs. My breathing was getting less and less frequent and more shallow. They couldn't find a pulse. One of them poked me in the eye, to which I didn't respond at all.
At 5:20 p.m., the Sherpas declare him dead.
The decision has to be made to save Sherpas' lives, and that's to leave Lincoln. Sherpas have been working at over 8,000 metres now for over 24 hours, and although the Sherpa people are very strong and very tough and very kind and loyal, there's only so much they can do before their own lives have been put at risk.
The Sherpas stay with Lincoln for another 2 hours until finally expedition leader Alex Abramov orders them down. They take Lincoln's belongings and he's left alone, without oxygen, water, or shelter. Nobody has ever been left for dead this high and survived.
I was meditating by the fire, and somehow I felt Lincoln's arms around me, and I didn't like the feeling of that at all.
My next step, of course, was to have to phone Barbara, his wife, and we just knew what a tragedy. We were just a small part of his life, but to have to suddenly make the phone call to say that, he died to his family, that was terrible.
Another phone call came through from base camp, and I just knew instantly that it was the worst news possible, and I didn't want to hear it, and I didn't want to continue the conversation, but I had to be told.
Mum called us out there, and it had been Mike who'd called, and she sat us down on the couch and said, boys, about 20 minutes ago, your dad passed away.
Well, everything just seemed to go blank.
And we just sat there together in a huddle, holding hands and hugging and crying, and we didn't know what to do.
Alone, the highest person on Earth, Lincoln Hall has been declared dead. But something unexpected happens that night. The weather begins to change. A blanket of cloud covers Lincoln, preventing the temperature from dropping below minus 25 degrees.
I mean, it's very hard to know exactly what happened. I resurfaced somehow and I actually woke up and I realized where I was.
Lincoln's luck begins to change.
Whatever way you look at it, it was a very strange set of circumstances.